Dr. Dan's Freedom Forum is on the air.
Good evening, and this is Dr. Dan, and this is Freedom Forum Live, streaming every Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. The third Tuesday of every month will feature a guest from the Libertarian Party and will be called the Libertarian Perspective. Tonight's guest is Rob Yates, Media and Communications Director of the Libertarian Party of North Carolina. Rob Yates has run for NC General Assembly, and currently he is running for mayor of Charlotte, and of course we wish him lots of luck with that. He spends his free time trying to raise raise children who are smart enough to never get involved in politics. So Rob, welcome to Dr. Dan's Freedom Forum Live.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure to be here. Always good to see you. Coming in, I don't know if you can see in the background, got the ocean view behind me. Live from Ocracoke Island, North Carolina, my favorite place on the planet. So a little sun and a big smile. Very happy to be here.
Well, it's great to have you, Rob. I love talking with you. And I've got a few things to say to start us off. You know, the concepts of individual freedom, personal liberty, limited government, free market economy, and private property were the philosophy of our nation's founders. And that philosophy is the foundation of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I know you're familiar with all that. But today, these constitutional protections are being ridiculed, ignored, abused, altered, and eradicated by the elected and appointed government officials whose primary ambition, unfortunately for all of us, is self-enrichment and a lust for power. When the established government is out of control and unresponsive to the rights of the people, rational citizens seek to replace the corrupt government with one that will obey the Constitution and the rule of law. Now, you also know that since the election of President Ulysses S. Grant in 1868, America has been almost exclusively a two-party political system in which the Democrats and Republicans have shared virtually all the power. Contentious times, however, often serve as the incentive for the resurgence of small political parties and the formation of new ones. The Libertarian Party of the United States was formed in Colorado Springs in the home of Luke Zell by a group of individuals led by David Nolan on December 11th, 1971. The formation was prompted in part by price controls and the end of the gold standard, both implemented by President Richard Nixon. The Libertarian Party maintains that the dominant Republican and Democrat parties of today have diverged from the libertarian principles of America's founding fathers. Now, in North Carolina, the Libertarian Party routinely runs qualified and knowledgeable candidates for local and state office. For example, Mike Ross was the Libertarian candidate for governor of North Carolina in 2024. His political website was firetheuniparty.com. I love that. It was incredible. It wasn't his name, but it was his statement of his purpose. Now, Mike Ross was a guest on Freedom Forum Radio during the campaign. I was really totally impressed with him. His campaign motto expressed the simple reason to vote for a small party. His campaign motto was, and I quote, "We all see how bad things have gotten, the polarization of the country, the ideological capture of our institutions, and the charade of governing of our politicians. We all want something different, so let's vote for something different." Man, was he right. So Rob Yates, let's start. What is your view about the role and importance of small political parties in the USA?
Well, you said something interesting there that the LPNC runs qualified candidates, and most of the time, I like to think we do. I'm kind of the exception to that rule. um, so I opened with that kidding around, but I'm actually hoping to be the role of smaller, let's say, or third parties, or however you want to phrase it, in the United States. I think that one of the things we can do first is force the two major parties to come around to the issues that we care about. I know in North Carolina, a couple of years ago, the constitutional carry was up on the ballot, and it was going to pass. And the Republicans had a veto-proof supermajority, and they failed to pass it. They backed down, and I feel like they're paying the political consequences for that. They lost the supermajority, and they're real concerned about getting it back. But Stein's going to veto, or he vetoed it. We'll see if they can come together to override the veto. But the first thing I think we can do is really push important issues in the direction of liberty. I think the second thing that we can do is win some smaller elections. You and I were chatting beforehand at the top levels. We got one real libertarian in the cabinet. We have in Congress, in Thomas Massey, and then Rand Paul sort of floats around that gray area. Justin Amash would definitely, if we could get him back in, he would constitute a libertarian. But just look at the conversation Thomas Massey has generated for sticking to principles and not being afraid of Trump or the Mike Johnson, who's proven to be one of the worst speakers we've ever had. And I think small parties can really push in that direction. I think you're starting to see more awareness of this. I think you see the Forward Party has formed. You see, how can I not forget to remember his name? Elon Musk, his American Party, but they're sort of sticking to some of the principles of the Libertarian Party. And I think you're just going to see it continuing to move in that direction, because every election cycle we're told, this is the most important election of your lifetime. We're told this is going to be different. We're told if you vote for the other guy, all these things will happen. So you vote for your person, and then all the bad things happen. And I think people are just starting to see through the nonsense.
Well, obviously that's what happens is we do have a uniparty. They all promise whatever they think is going to get them elected. And when they get to Washington, D.C., it doesn't take long for them to succumb to the whatever it is they're succumbing to. I don't want to accuse, but I'm sure there's money involved. I'm sure there's political favors involved. There's being able to go to places where common people can't go, stuff like that. It's all involved in the trappings of power that we see in Washington, D.C. So no matter what you promise when you are running for office, when you get up to Washington, D.C., most people do not have the fortitude to really stick to their guns. And that's why we have a uniparty. They're all paid off in one way or another to do the bidding of the people with money. We got to break that cycle.
We absolutely do. And the thing that concerns me the most is that there are people who still believe you can break that cycle with the government. As long as there's power to be bought, money will find a way to buy that power. I think the only way you can break that cycle is by taking the power away from the elected officials.
So how do you think that you're going?
Sorry, I think I lost you for a second. How were you saying, how do you take the power away from the officials?
Yeah, if you take power away from officials, how is government going to work?
Well, government doesn't work, or it does exactly what it's intended to. I think, and I'm preaching to the choir here. You and I have talked about this many times before, but you decentralize. You put the power in the hands of local government, and smaller is always better because people can get held accountable. I know that, especially in the Libertarian Party, a lot of people are very skeptical of HOAs. I personally tend to love my HOA. And when they were doing some things we didn't like, my wife ran for the HOA, got on the board, became president, unwound those things so people had some more rights over their property. She lowered the dues a little bit, the annual dues, but then through efficiency was actually able to put in a new playground, and everyone's very happy with it. So that's direct government in my estimation. Like, that's the way a government should work. Instead of these, massive 4,000 or 5,000 page bills that cost $6 trillion, where no one knows what the money's going for, that, it's never an issue leading up to the passage of these omnibus bills. But then all of a sudden it's this game of brinksmanship. And it's like, if you don't vote for this, the government's going to shut down and the whole world's going to collapse. And that's how they do it at the top down. We're so far away from anything arm's length. We have no idea what's actually going on, who's getting paid off. One thing that always sticks in my mind is Tulsi was talking about when she first got elected to Congress, and the first thing she was, she gets in, she gets sworn in, she goes to her office, and she's got 8 hours of calls with fundraisers or potential, 8 hours of fundraising calls with potential donors. That's not governing. What happened to actually looking at the problems and looking for a solution that is actually a solution, not an intervention that lasts forever and just costs perpetually more money.
Well, what you're talking about is really what the Founding Fathers intended. They intended limited government in Washington, D.C. You'd elect someone to go there for 3 months a year, maybe, to do the very limited work of federal government, and then come home and live among the people that had voted or not voted for him. So if you did something up in Washington that people didn't like, they'd walk up and knock on your door and say, "Hey, dude, what'd you do that for? That's a stupid thing. I don't like it. I'm never voting for you again because of it." So that is the direct accountability of elected officials that you and I both know works best, because that's the only way that you can really control government. You control it locally. Let those people go up to Washington on a very, very, very short leash and yank it back. So you can control you could control what they do. That's the way, and that's what I know, that's what you want, and I agree with you. The problem is we have a stranglehold on this country by the Unipart Party up in Washington, D.C., and we have to release the grip of that uniparty in order for us to be free back here, down in this county, that town, and that town.
And it is a trying thing. I wrote an essay a few months ago. Now you can find it on lpnc.org, or I'll drop the link into the comments. It's The Torch. So if you go to lpallies.com, and then The Torch is on there, but I forget the new address for The Torch. But it was why libertarians are different. Like, how are we different than the Uniparty? And my argument was basically that the Libertarian Party is a vehicle for driving political change, legislative change, getting people elected, but it is a subcomponent of the liberty movement, which is committed to the principle of spreading liberty. Whereas the Republicans and the Democrats don't really have a principle they're committed to. They're only, their primary motivation, and really their predominant motivation to a large degree, is winning elections. And so it's a whole different incentive structure. So when your incentive is to win elections, you do what it takes to win elections. And that means selling your soul. Like I say a few times before, once you make a compromise, you're compromised. And I'm not naive enough to pretend that there's no compromise in government. One thing I've always said is that I'll take, if you want to give me money for my campaign, I'll accept money from anyone. You know who I am. I ain't going to change. Like, my principles aren't for sale. But if I had ever had a big donor come along with whom I agree and say, I want you to make my issue your priority. So let's say a gun rights group came in and they said, we want constitutional carry and freedom to carry without harassment from the government to be your primary issue, and we'll give you a bunch of money to put that at the top of the docket. Like, okay, that seems reasonable. Your money's worth something. You've worked hard for it. I'm in line with this issue. You're now giving me the financial backing to push on that. It doesn't mean I'm going to abandon my other issues, but sure, you can buy priorities.
Well, priorities are obviously important. And that's one of the things that smaller parties get to do
Yep.
that larger parties can't. Being in the Republican or Democrat Party, everything is a compromise. There is no such thing as not compromising because no one agrees on everything. And you have some groups who are your diehard supporters. They may want some things that some of the other people are not so
Yep.
hot to do. So the other people have to compromise on some of the things they want in order to get you and your supporters to go along. And that's one of the big problems with our form of government here. It's a winner take all system. That is the root of that compromise within the party, but not compromise on the basic lust for power and going after the money.
And you, so to tie that up, you actually said something really key earlier. Is the founders intended it to be those politicians would come home and have to literally face the music. We had something in North Carolina called rough music that got a bad rep because it was used against enslaved people sometimes, but it was also used on politicians. And I'm wondering if we need to bring that part back. But they literally had to face the music, whereas now they never do. You look at Lindsey Graham running again. I mean, Barbara Boxer was infirmed from a stroke and somehow able to still vote at 90 plus years old. But that's not a person out representing the people that they're supposed to be standing for. That's just some bought and sold position that special interests, corporate interests. I mean, they're not doing anything to help out the average person.
Well, of course, and we all remember those instances of old people being wheeled in wheelchairs into the Senate, and people walking with them and physically holding their hand in the air to vote because
God.
they were incapable of raising the hand themselves and probably couldn't even hear what was going on and undoubtedly didn't even understand. You know, that's what's really got to stop. And what perpetuates that is the enormous amount of money involved in national politics. That is the grip that we have to loosen on ourselves so we can get that power back at a more local level. Because you're right, running for mayor of Charlotte is a very good thing to do. I would hope I would hope you win, and I think Charlotte would be an awful lot better off with a libertarian than whatever they have going now, which obviously is a disaster. So you need to have power at the local level. There's no question about that.
You know, it's interesting you say that. Charlotte is a pretty strongly blue city, and the um, is it Dervinger? I can't think of his name, but he says with any political battle for power, you'll ultimately split into two parties. I wrote about it in the essay. I don't necessarily think that has to be true, but I do think it's the tendency. And the Democratic Party in Charlotte has really split into kind of two factions. And it's interesting to see the political battle playing out. One more business oriented, but then like strangely very like they consider themselves environmental. And then the other one is much more progressive, much more like social issue oriented. But something else you said, the amount of money in federal politics in that essay I was talking about, I'm going to get this close, but I want to make sure I'm right. But I believe that the last presidential election generated more revenue or cost more money than the NFL makes in one season, and then the entire Avengers franchise brought in up through Endgame. So it is a lot of money.
Yeah, and when you're dealing with that amount of money, it's easy to buy people. It's
And that's what it,
very difficult to resist uh, a huge amount of money being offered to you. You say, if I take this money, I can retire and never work another day in my life.
yep.
How do you turn that down to say, well, what you want is against my principles of governance? How do you do that?
And you asked the right question because it's so tough because it's not just this amount of money would change my life and I never have to work again. It's I take this and all I have to do is vote for this bill. Just vote yes, one time, and then my family's taken care of. My grandkids are taken care of. I certainly recognize the pressure. When they say power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, there's a reason people are saying that.
That's true. And of course, that's what we're dealing with. So, again, my question to you is how do you go about getting rid of that grip of Washington, D.C., so that we can govern ourselves locally? I think, and I look just in the state of North Carolina. I am a county commissioner, Cherokee County. I've been a county commissioner. This is my third term since 2014. When I first became a commissioner, my eyes opened up extremely wide when I realized that in North Carolina, the state government of North Carolina owns the counties. It is sort of like the limited government type concept where Raleigh gives the Cherokee County government and every county government a list of things. Here is what you can do, and the rest of these things we get to do. And so that was news to me. Another thing, for instance, was that every single road in the state of North Carolina is owned by the state. We have absolutely no say, not even what speed limits in our own county. We can't even say, I want the speed limit to be 60 or 65. Here we are in a rural county. We should be able to go 65 or 70 on some of these roads, the 4-lane and things like that. We have no chance of doing that. And so the state of North Carolina is kind of a miniature example of the federal government and the rest of the country. We are not a home rule state. I would love it to be different.
I'm with you. So I know something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so how do we do that? I mean, every time we try to do something, a little note pops up on the screen that says, sorry, you can't do that.
I think there is an opportunity, and something you mentioned, Mike Ross, something he talked about. We talk about the 10th Amendment and nullification, jury nullification. I think there's other opportunities for nullification. I'll tell you this: if I run for win in Charlotte, and sorry, I'm just getting some light on here. It's getting a little dark. But yeah, I would push a nullification concept. You talk about the speed limits. Why not just change the speed limits? Test it out, see what happens. I understand it is tricky in North Carolina, being that not a home rules. I think it's called a Dillon rules. I'm going to get that wrong.
Dillon rule state is what it is.
Okay, yeah. So
not a home rule.
Yeah.
I don't know who Dillon was, but I hate him.
Yeah, I'm not a fan either.
Not a fan. No, not a fan.
No, but I mean, I'm with you. I'd start with nullification. See what happens. Put it to the test.
I'm a big fan of nullification, interposition, and secession. I think those are the three tools our founders gave each state, really, to use in order to remain free. I've been fair, and jury nullification as well. I had the jury nullification people on my radio program a couple of years ago. They're out from Montana. So you're on the right track, but I need a toolbox.
Man, if we can win some elections, I will set the toolbox up. We certainly have some concepts. I'm telling anyone listening, vote for me, vote for us, because we know the direction we would take to do it. But in terms of a toolbox, I think that is a case-by-case situation. I think you need to involve lawyers. You need to be ready because they're going to come for you. Power does not like to have its power challenged. The system hates to be proven wrong. It would depend on how are you going about it. As Mayor of Charlotte is actually it's interesting because you wield a lot of influence and you can swing certain things pretty strongly, but there's not a ton of direct power you have over the city council. There's some veto opportunity, some tying vote opportunity. But I would simply do whatever I could in almost every issue to stall everything the city council was trying to doing. And then I try to influence. One thing I'd really want to push for, like Charlotte is having a pretty serious crime problem. They've talked about a community policing effort before, and instead we spend $1 million on an MRAP, like armored car that can break into a building, which seems one of the more pointless money expenditures I've heard of. And then we send hundreds of millions of dollars to billionaires to build tennis facilities and improve sports stadiums because billionaires need our money, but our taxes are going up for it. And I would work as hard as I could to stop just corrupt nonsense like that. The Wall Street Journal called it like the worst deal in city council history or something.
That's what's going on everywhere, Rob.
Yeah.
Going on everywhere. In a smaller county like ours, it's more difficult. We have very limited funding. And I found that to be really an important thing to consider. When you have really, really limited funding, it's really very important to stick to the guidelines, the right rules, do the right thing, because you don't have a slush fund to play with. Once you get up to Washington, D.C., there's so much money around. They can play all day, all night, and that's what they do.
And what we failed, I know everyone sort of realizes it, but what we fail to, I don't know if digest is the right word, or really incorporate in their thought, what they have is our money. Like, they print money, sure, so they're devaluing our money, but they either have our money or they're printing money to devalue our money. One thing that I reflect on this, like, my mind's blown all the time. So I think the average cost of a house in 1971, something like $37,000. The average cost of a house today is something like $270,000. The average cost of a house in gold has not changed from 1971 till now. They've just deflated our currency that much. Inflation is that bad that your $37,000 in 1971 is now $270,000. And that's what gets you a house. But real assets don't change prices. That's all the government devaluing your currency.
That's really a great thing to talk about, and a great image. And I have one that's, of course, very similar. And that is in 1913, 1 ounce of gold would buy you an absolutely excellent, high-quality men's suit. It's about $35. Nowadays, 1 ounce of gold will buy you a very high-quality men's suit. And that's many more dollars. I don't even know what the price of gold is now. $1,800, $2,000, whatever. But that's why going off the gold standard was one of the reasons the Libertarian Party was formed in the first place.
Yep.
When that happened, that was one of the worst things that could ever have happened. Second only to the Federal Reserve Bank, the direct election of senators, and the income tax, all 1913, as you well know.
It was not a good year for our country.
Not a good year for freedom, not a good year for the financial health of our country. So let's apply some libertarian principles. Let's see how libertarian principles work in government. How does that work?
Yeah, I was going back and forth with someone online about this earlier today or yesterday, but the way the libertarian philosophy works is that people have to rely on themselves. And I actually think that that's a big roadblock to some of the people adopting libertarian philosophy, or at least being willing to try it out in practice, because when you're told by the system, and I don't mean to use the system in the sort of, cliche context. I just mean everything, the popular media, the government, the regulatory agencies and their guidelines that are coming down, the school system. So just the information that we are ingesting. When you're told without the protection of the system, you will face some sort of consequence that harms you, whether it's your health, your safety, or whatever it may be. and you're told that repeatedly, practicing freedom becomes a very scary thing because people value their safety, and I respect that. But I think of, Benjamin Franklin's quote, "Those who would abandon safety or liberty for safety will find that they have neither." And I think it's absolutely true. So what does a libertarian application look like? Well, let's start to rely on yourself. One of the big things people love to say is, what about the roads? Well, who will build the roads? Well, the government doesn't build roads. Road builders build roads, and road builders would continue to build roads. The government just wouldn't be the middleman, taking their percentage off the top that they're using against us to get themselves elected again, while kicking some of that, to their special interest groups and not doing open bidding for contracts so the roads cost more. Have you seen, perfect example, you want to talk about an absolute disaster. Have you seen the details on the hypertrain in California?
How long is it now? Is it like 100 yards or something like that?
I want to say they haven't built anything yet. They've cleared one bit of land, but they haven't actually built anything yet. And it's an exorbitant amount of money just wasted. You might as well, it would have been better if they had taken that money and set fire to it, because it would have increased the value of your currency.
Well, that is true. And what you've raised is probably one of the key points in libertarian philosophy that people need to understand. And I kind of look at it as if I were making a challenge coin, and I'd call it the coin of freedom. One side would be freedom of choice and freedom of action, but the other side would be personal responsibility. Because
Absolutely.
you cannot have freedom of action, you cannot have freedom of choice unless you're willing to pay the price for your own actions. And that's something that is not completely, but pretty much gone away from our country. A lot of that battle has been fought multiple times in our country on many things and in our state. For instance, like having motorcycle riders wear helmets. Okay, they say it's my freedom to ride without a helmet. Okay, so if you get in a wreck and you end up on life support, why do I have to pay for that?
And exactly. And that's like, yeah, you don't want to wear a helmet, don't wear a helmet, and then just take accountability for what happens. Life is risk.
That's right. Life has risks. If you want to be free, then you have to accept the risk and be accountable for your decisions. I think we have probably the majority of people in this country who will not agree to accept responsibility. They think everything that happens bad to them is someone else's fault, and the government's got to pay.
And the fact, the reality is, even if something is someone else's fault, most of the time it's still on you. There's so little we can do about certain things. The places where government comes in is when there's actual violation of person or property, and you can seek some sort of restitution. Or I hate the word justice because it's such a broad term. We've had philosophical discussions about that going on for hundreds, thousands of years, really. So I hate to say justice, but we can certainly have a quote unquote justice system that can get violent people off the streets. It is not doing the best job of some of that, or of preventing them from committing more crimes, but that's a separate issue. But in terms of libertarian philosophy, instead of having essentially like a street soldier, and I don't want to paint all cops in this light, but the way the policing system in the US is set up, it's a street soldier unit that drives revenue for a lot of these places. They're much more interested in tickets and petty arrests. I just had a friend in Southern Virginia, and I'm not going to give any details, not that it's secret, but he's going to let me do a whole expose on this. But he had the cops called on him for a suspected overdose. Not an overdose, nothing related. It had actually fallen on his head. They showed up thinking it was an overdose. He was taken 4 hours away from his house, even though at this point he's fine. He's completely coherent. There's video of it. He's talking to them. I'm totally fine. I don't need to go. What's going on? But they heard the word overdose, so now they're bringing him in, trying to prove it's an overdose. He gets brought to a facility 4 hours away. He's there for 72 hours. He sees a doctor at this facility. Now, it's a private facility, but it's the only facility in the state of Virginia or this part of Virginia that has a contract with the government, and it keeps people and gets paid our tax dollars to keep people. The doctor comes in and recommends another 2-week stay because he could be a danger to himself. Again, suspected overdose, no drugs. Like, this is, there's no reason to hold him. And it was only because his brother is a doctor who got on with the magistrate and explained the situation that the magistrate didn't require him to stay for an additional 2 weeks. He said there were tons of people in there that were just like fine, like something was mistaken, or they had done something drug related, or like one person was committed for talking about, wanting to end her life, but not being ready to act and was like looking for actual help. And they're all just locked up in this facility with bad rooms, bad food. I take that back. He did say the food was really good. So one in the win column, I don't know. But everything else is just this miserable situation. I'm looking into it more as I read this expose to see what they spend per patient, because I know it's a racket and I know they're kicking that money back to politicians. And that's how we get hurt. That's how we get screwed. That's tyranny at the local level.
But of course, that when you come to the judicial system, the Bill of Rights is very, very specific about what the government can and cannot do. The government has been very clever in being able to evade the rules to their own advantage. We should not be allowing that to happen because, as I said, if you read the Bill of Rights, especially the 4th, 5th, 6th, and even 7th Amendment, it is very specific of how you should be treated by the police and by the judiciary. And that has really absolutely gone at this point.
Well, we don't even pretend to follow the 4th Amendment anymore. There was another case in Alamance County, Brian Turner. I'm going to post an article about that on this week. But he was, basically the situation is he got in an argument with his wife. Their kids were asleep, so they started arguing outside. Nothing abnormal. They were yelling at each other. People do that. She went for a walk to cool off. I guess neighbors heard the arguing and called in. Cops didn't do anything, but his wife had been out for too long, so he asked another neighbor to watch his kids. Goes to this local park in Gibsonville, North Carolina, and runs into a cop. Cop hasn't seen her. He explains the situation. Cop says, sorry, you got to leave. It's after sunset. We're not open. He says, okay, cool, no problem. He goes back to his house. Now the cop decides to follow up on the call. Basically tackles him in his driveway, and Brian goes to put his daughter in his house, and now the cop says you're resisting arrest. Cuffs him and takes him in for assaulting a law enforcement officer, that DPO or DRO, resisting, disorderly, and whatever else it is. It's the worst charge there is on the books. And child abuse, because why not? He ends up to resisting, and then he went to complain about it. So he's posted on social and he's complaining at the city council meetings. And he's being pushy. Like, he's distraught. He's frustrated. I get it. He's clearly irritating them, but your government has no right not to be irritated by you. But they passed a no contact order and trespassed him from all public land in Gibsonville. So now he can't go watch his daughters play soccer at the local park because they didn't like what he wrote about them on social media.
Well, so how do you get the government to obey the law?
Man, when I figure that out, for sure, I'll let you know. I know how I'm trying. I mean, we have a unique opportunity in this day and age that we haven't lost what made this country great. It's being chipped away, but we still have the freedoms. We still have the right to push back. But now we have, the information age working for us. You have the internet. You can put an article online. You can get social media. You can do email campaigns. we had another email campaign. So I encourage everyone to check out Eric Roll at Huntersville, North Carolina, has just been relentlessly holding the town council accountable there. And one of the things he was really after was civil asset forfeiture. So in North Carolina, we technically don't have civil asset forfeiture, but we have this thing called equitable sharing, where you can bring in a federal law enforcement agency. They can forfeit assets civilly, and then they will share a significant percentage with the local law enforcement with whom they partnered. So it's a big loophole. And Huntersville was using something like $280,000 of this money that was forfeited civilly. No proof that any of these people were criminally convicted, to buy a bunch of stuff. And we organized a letter writing campaign. We were trying to get them to vote down using that money, and we were unsuccessful on that part, but we did get a commitment from the police chief that any further money they accepted, it would be required that that money came from someone who had a criminal conviction. So they couldn't just civilly, because civil asset forfeiture is the biggest racket really the biggest racket. There's more money taken civilly through civil asset forfeiture than stolen by, armed criminals, actual criminals or burglars. But you don't represent your property, has a court case against itself. So you'll see like state of Oregon versus $4 million. And it's not connected to criminal activity that they suspect. It's a way that law enforcement, again, it's a revenue generation service. And it was $4.5 billion last year. So it is a big revenue generation service. But this comes back to, like, I go off on these tangents, but this is all the violation of the Fourth Amendment, violation of the First Amendment, your right to redress your government, violation of the 13th Amendment. This is a form of involuntary servitude, if you ask me. And that goes back to 1913. That's the Federal Reserve, the devaluation of money, the income tax. Paying income tax is kind of slavery. I mean, I try not to be hyperbolic about it. And I understand that the United States' period of slavery, there was something much darker than what I'm getting at, but this is much broader. It's all of us. We all have our money stolen from us that we work for, so that government officials can pay out their special interest donors and keep getting elected. And libertarians just want to stop that. Don't hurt people. Don't take their stuff. Be accountable for your own actions. There's nothing crazy about that to me.
Well, that's absolutely, and Mike Ross is the one who told me that, and I've used that multiple times since, because I think that is a great way of dealing with people. And what I've done, I did a series of short videos on that. I call them the 3 rules. What are the 3 rules that people need to follow in order to live peaceably with one another? Well, the first rule is live and let live. The second is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the third one is don't hurt anyone and don't take their stuff. And those are the 3 rules. The problem is that the government does not follow those rules. And so there's that saying, don't steal, the government doesn't like the competition. And that's really true. They don't like the competition. And so they have devised very unique ways of stealing from us, and they have the muscle to do that. And that's why it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning, Rob. How do we release the grip that Washington has on us? That is the problem, where I think libertarian principles have to be applied, probably at the local level.
It's where we start, and you just work your way up, and you hope that we can ship the veil back. I know I get whomever is in power, whatever party is in power at the top, tends to hate me. That's where I get the most hate. So I thought, I don't even want to call Biden a terrible president, because it's like giving him credit for being aware of where he was. But I thought he had a terrible administration, and I got a lot of flack from Democrats and had a lot of Republican friend allies during that 4 years. And now all of a sudden the Republicans have turned on me because I'm saying things like, hey, what happened to these Epstein files Trump was going to release? And hey, these tariffs aren't exactly doing what they're supposed to. They're making prices more expensive for us. And, it was a Scott Bassan or whatever saying they generated $100 billion from foreign companies through these tariffs. And it's like, no, you took another $100 billion from us. And some of the things that we get promised, it's like Trump said he's going to initiate tariffs, but get rid of the income tax. And I would be 100% fine with that trade-off to start, because tariffs aren't going to bring nearly as much money. So you got to shrink the government as a result. I mean, really substantially shrink the government. So I think that's a good start. But people are pointing this out, and I'm like, we're not going to shrink the income tax. And they're talking about the big, beautiful bill and no more tax on Social Security. Like, really? All they did was extend the standard deduction for Social Security another $6,000 for individuals, $12,000 for couples, and it lasts until 2028, and it disappears pretty quickly as you make more income. No tax on tips, same thing, stops at $25,000 and disappears in 2028. So we just get fed a whole bunch of lies no matter who's in power. But I think Trump was an interesting political figure, one of the more interesting probably of our lifetime, because the hope that he brought a lot of people is that he was willing to challenge the system. He was going to break the system. I was skeptical. I'm like, he's a billionaire real estate developer from New York. He kind of is the system. But I am an eternal optimist. I was hoping to see something, but I feel like now people are kind of waking up. Like, he's not any worse than the rest of them. He's just no different than the rest of them. Comes in a little bit of a different package. And he's going after Massey. And I hope that's the final straw for a lot of people. And I know, fingers crossed, maybe we'll see a Massey run in 2028.
So that, I think one of the points that you made earlier, which really is good, is that we cannot expect the federal government to take care of us the way we want to be taken care of. They are only interested in taking care of themselves individually. And under those circumstances, we have to learn libertarian principles of acting locally. Yep. That's what it pretty much comes down to me. And I think that I would encourage people to be very active locally, not in an ugly way. You don't have to be ugly to be effective, but you have to challenge reasonably the powers locally, run for office, be present at when people are running for office, ask them questions, and then if they're elected, you got to hold their feet to the fire. Those are libertarian principles, aren't they?
So much. And I want to echo what you said. For everyone listening, please, like, go to your next city or town council meeting, and then go to everyone after that. Even if you don't speak, listen. See what they're promising. Ask who's getting paid for it. A lot of the proposals they want to pass, they have to have presentations on, especially in North Carolina. A lot of places do require some sort of public discussion, availability for public discussion. So they will have a developer come in, and that developer has to present their plan, and then get up and challenge it and say, why are you doing this? And who's getting paid? And what was the open bidding process? Like, these questions will start to make a difference. And expect pushback at first, because, again, the system does not like to be challenged. But like you were saying, this is your neighbor. You can find out where this person lives. You can go knock on the door politely and say, hey, when you're free, here's my address. Come by. Let's have a burger and a beer. Like, I really want to understand where you're coming from. I know in my district, one of the reasons I ran for mayor as opposed to city council is that the person on city council from my district, I really like. And if she were in Congress, I would disagree with every single thing she does, because she's a very strong Democrat on the federal level. But when her policies get applied at the local level, she ends up pushing back against a lot of centralized planning for development from city council, and she ends up pushing back against money being spent on stadiums and tennis complexes. So I didn't want to challenge her. I didn't want to hurt her run for it. So going for mayor, where I think that our leadership has been wanting a bit more.
So this has been a pretty interesting discussion, because we have discussed the libertarian perspective on our government. We all deal with government, no matter whether we like to, whether you think you can live in a little cabin back in the woods or whatever you think you are still dealing with the government one way or the other. And the only way to deal with them is to actually be present when decisions are made.
It's something I've been trying to say more as I've done speaking events and where I'm writing. Like, I don't buy this "Make America Great Again." This country is amazing. We should not forget that. Like, we are so lucky. You want to talk about privilege? You're privileged to live in America. I've lived in a communist country. You do not want to live in a communist country. The freedoms on which this country, the ideals on which we're founded, are arguably the greatest social achievement in human history. But we're losing them. The government of this country is not great. The government of this country is a monolith that is rolling over people, and it is getting exponentially bigger. So take what made this country great and hold on to it and push back against what's trying to ruin it. And start by just go to your next city council meeting. Get to know all your representatives. Find out how they voted on things before and ask why. And then ask how they're going to vote on the next things. And if you don't like it, go file to run. Reach out, lpnc.org. If you're in North Carolina, we will help get you on a ballot. Honestly, if you want to run as a Republican or a Democrat or a Green Party, that's all that's there now. But you're looking to sign up for the Forward Party or the Veterans Party or the We the People Party, whatever it may be, like, we'll point you in the right direction because we just want more voices. We believe that in a real free marketplace of ideas, libertarian philosophy will rise to the top. And so we are trying to readjust the I suppose, intellectual paradigm, the conversational paradigm, if you will, so that ideas get a fair shake and they're not being polluted by the scare tactics that the Uniparty uses to try and keep people in line.
Very good, Rob. lpnc.org, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
lpnc.org. And that's, of course, the state of North Carolina. People are listening to this all over the place. You have a Libertarian Party where you are. Libertarians are everywhere. And they think kind of like Rob and I do. And that is that you should be free. You should be able to choose what you do in life for yourself. But you have to be responsible for your decisions. Right or wrong, you have to make amends if you screw up, or you can celebrate the joys of being successful. But whatever you do, you are responsible for your life. Is that not right, Rob?
Not only is it right, it's a beautiful thing. You get to be responsible for your life. There's nothing more you can ask for.
That's the ultimate freedom, isn't it? When I think of freedom,
absolutely,
do what you want and accept responsibility. Rob Yates, 100%. It's been great talking with you tonight.
I love talking to you, Dr. Dan. Thank you.
And I look forward to every third Tuesday. Every third Tuesday will be the Libertarian Perspective. We will have someone else from the Libertarian Party who has his own ideas, because libertarians all have their own ideas, don't they? Sometimes, maybe. Of course. In any event, Rob, thank you so much for being a guest on Dr. Dan's Freedom Forum. Live. It's live. lpnc.org. Thank you, Rob Yates.